Mrs. Eleuterius was born in 1909 and died in 2001. The wife of Demetrius Eleuterius, she worked more than 45 years in the seafood factories of Biloxi. Mr. Dubaz came with his family in 1902 from Pensacola area to Biloxi. The son of Yugoslavian immigrants, he worked from the time he was 6 years old in the seafood factories. He later formed the Dubaz Brothers Seafood with his brothers. Their love of music also led them to perform as the Dubaz Brothers Orchestra. They were very popular entertainment of their day. Mr. Dubaz passed from his life in 1985.
Those factory whistles blew mighty early, right, Luke?
Yes, ma'am. Those were tough times. But isn't it funny? As hard as life was, there were still happy memories, too. Like playing music at the hotels, the old Slavonian ladies making the pusherata and bow ties, and the blessings of the fleet.
Yes, neighborhood dances, church festivals, midnight masses at Christmas time. Some wonderful memories. But the endless work, the long hours working so hard for so little, it changes a child. Our generation worked so hard, all to make a better life. The generations after us would have easier lives than we did. Just think of the doctors, teachers, lawyers, businessmen, community and civic leaders produced by our generation.
Yes, we instilled in them the most basic wishes of our mothers and fathers, and that was the desire to have a better life and to use the blessings that God gave to each of us.
Do you remember having to stand on boxes and logs because you were too little to reach the work tables? And the mothers who brought their babies to the factories and then would stop to nurse the babies and go back to work for the day?
Yes, I remember. Do you remember working from 4 a.m. to 5 or 6 p.m.? You didn't stop until all the seafood was processed. There wasn't any heat in the freezing cold winters, and there wasn't enough ventilation in the boiling hot summers. The first day I worked, I was 6 years old, and I made 25 cents. Standing in front of the cars filled with steamed oysters, I shucked them and filled my pail. When my pail was full, I was paid a nickel. I was able to do this 5 times in the course of 12 hours.
When you worked shrimp, the goal was to fill a metal cup up that had holes in it for the shrimp juice to escape. Those cups were small enough, but you just try to fill one up. Of course, as time went on, you got faster and faster. Luke, you remember the shrimp nickels?
Oh yes. When you filled your cup, you took it to the windows. They emptied your cup and they paid you a nickel. We wore aprons, pockets, and the nickels were stored there until we cashed them in at the end of the day. After all the use, the nickels would turn green after the acid from all the shrimp.
Even worse than what the shrimp juice did to the nickels is what it did to the hands of the Biloxi workers. Red, raw, swollen hands. I was told as a child that it was your mother Maggie who introduced the Biloxi workers to the use of alum and alum water to heal the hands.
Yes, she learned about it in Pensacola. She was born, raised, and first started in the seafood. My father, Giovanni, a high-ranking seaman in Dalmatia, who had sailed many years, came to the Florida coast in 1883 at the age of 32. He had signed onto the bark the Venzalo, which reached its destination in Pensacola 1 year after departing its home port of Viganj. So many wars and rumors of wars in his native country, it was no wonder why he decided to make Pensacola his home. There he met my mother and raised a family of 5, I being the youngest. We moved to Biloxi in 1902 and lived in the Wesley boarding house on Point Caddy, which later became Holy Angel's nursery. It was a year later we built our own home just behind Old St. Michael Church. Speaking of St. Michael's, that's where my brother Dolph learned to play the piano and the Dubaz brothers got their start in the music biz.
I can still remember listening to the Dubaz Brothers Orchestra. Y'all were some kind of good.
Well, the locals enjoyed us, and so did the tourists. In fact, our first paid engagement was at the Magnolia Hotel in 1909. By that time, George was an accomplished violinist. Dolph played piano, bass, trombone, alto horn, and the violin. And me, I was the drummer. We played all the swanky hotels, the Montrose, Alvarez, the White House. Soon we were playing 2 to 3 nights a week and made more in one night than we did all day at the factories. I was 10 and Dolph was about 16. Sorry. Of course, this work was only in the summers when the tourists were in abundance at the hotels. We also played with the Biloxi Daily Herald Marching Band for civic events.
Oh, I remember. I think you and your brothers were the only dance band in Biloxi for a while there. But I especially remember y'all marching and playing in the Fireman's Parade.
Yes, we learned lots of patriotic music, and were even asked to play at the Battleship Hotel in Mobile for an event celebrating the inauguration of the Panama Canal. The Marine Band also played this event, and they were led by John Philip Sousa. That was in 1914. But we weren't the only dance band in Biloxi at the time. There were two great black bands, Jimmy Wood's band and Romy's band.
I began working in the factories around the same time, around 1916 or so. I was about 7 years old. Our mothers would take us kids to work at 4 a.m. and we'd work until it was time to go to school. They'd bring us back home, get us cleaned up, and we'd go off to school. They would go back to the factories and wait until it was time for us to get out. They would walk us back to the factories and we'd work until time to go home. Luke, when did you and your brothers form the seafood industry?
Valerie, it was 1915 when the four of us got together to form Dubaz Brothers.
I worked for y'all many a year. Now much of the work is performed by machines. Now I tell you one thing, crabmeat picked by machines isn't fit for the seagull. My crabmeat was picked properly, no shells or holes. You can use it straight from the can.
That's right. Also changed is the labor pool. In my youth, there were camps of French, Yugoslavs, and the Polish or Bohemian workers. Later, in the late 1970s, the Vietnamese immigrants began to appear in greater numbers in the factories.
I'm proud of our contributions to Biloxi seafood heritage, and I'm proud of the generations that came after us who were raised to believe that hard work generates results. The Biloxi you see today was built on seafood, and it was families like ours that helped build the seafood industry. My Demetrius and I raised our son that way, and I know that's how you and Inez raised your family.
Yes, ma'am. Hard work and dedication can do anything that genius and advantage can do, and many things they cannot.